Hello, good evening, everybody. I'm really happy to welcome you. I think we're going to be in an intimate situation today, and I'm really happy to welcome today Linnea and Filips from Nonhuman Nonsense. And we've been lucky enough to have them here for 3 days workshop, and also trying to open gateways and attitudes to understanding other worlds, and I'm really happy that you are part of the Otherworlding program, and I'm also very happy of the results of the workshop. I think that it was a fantastic adventure for them, and I think that some of these projects will have a long-lasting legacy in the place. But I just wanted to do a short introduction, and then I leave you to talk about your projects. And first of all, to thank you in the name of Fabrica for your time and for your passion, and also for the amazing work that all of you have developed during these days. But I'm not going to talk too much and spoil your fantastic presentation, but just to say that one of the reasons why we decided to invite Nonhuman Nonsense was that, of course, it was one of these new studios that are working on this crossover of design and art that we are very interested here in Fabrica, and also because of this very interesting way of dealing between what we could call the possible dystopian future, but also with a fantastic humor and also a very interesting dynamics of understanding the relation with other species, which is also something that we are trying to push forward in the program. And also, for me, was also very interesting your capacity and your ability to really change the way that we perceive our environment and the stagnation we are in confrontation of the relation with the environment, and especially also the other species, the other worlds, no? So with further ado, I thank you again and welcome you to Fabrica, to our community, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as Carlos already mentioned, my name is Filips.
And I'm Linnea.
And we have a studio in Berlin, but Linnea is from Sweden and I'm from Latvia.
And I also just want to say thank you for these days.
Yes.
It's been super nice. Really happy and thankful.
Yeah, and super nice to see you again.
Yeah.
So we are an art and design studio, and usually we are 3 people, but Leo, he's away on a spiritual journey in India. And we don't know when or if he's coming back. And
He sent us some photos today from a lotus temple, which was nice because we did the ideation, the lotus ideation. I thought it was, yeah, it was nice. In our studio, we're interested in the relationship to the non-human. And yeah, we call it nonsense because we like to challenge the common sense. And we also are trying to embrace the paradoxical in our stories. And also the contradictory.
yeah, and our projects are always dealing with the relationship to the non-human. And the name of the non-human nonsense is partly because the stories or the proposals that we imagine with a different relationship towards the other is oftentimes nonsensical, or it doesn't, like you say, it contradicts oftentimes, but also because we recognize that the separation between the human and the non-human is nonsensical, that we do depend on each other and we make each other's worlds possible.
Yeah, and today we're going to present 5 projects, I think. And they have a little bit of different starting points and also perspectives and layers, I think. And we're going to start with a project that is about Mars, which is called Planetary Personhood. And it's a campaign that is pursuing space decolonization and it's a legal proposition of giving independent personhood for the entire planet Mars. And we also try to consider possibility of solidarity with the entities that live on Mars, which is mostly stones.
Yeah, and let's start with a little film.
Planetary personhood, a universal declaration of Martian rights. Planetary personhood proposes radical space decolonization to explore ways of not destroying another planet. The project suggests personhood for the planet Mars and considers the possibility of solidarity with the entities already there, the stones. As scientists continue to search for microscopic forms of life or even fossilized traces of it, planetary personhood takes the opposite approach, extending compassion and respect beyond the life-non-life boundary. Planetary personhood urges the declaration of the entire planet Mars as a legal and ontological person. Mars will be owned by Mars, and any decisions regarding Martian matters, such as mining or terraformation, will ultimately be taken by Mars, a new legal entity with rights protected in a Martian constitution. In an era where both corporations and volcanoes have become legal persons, Mars would be represented by a group of guardians from various philosophies and indigenous groups on Earth, many of which enable a deeply symbiotic and respectful bond to the land. On Mars, everyone and everything is born a Martian, and all Martians are born free and equal in dignity and rights. On collision course with earthly institutions, the project seeks citizenship for a Martian meteorite residing on Earth. Allen Hills 84001, blasted off the Martian surface by the impact of another meteor 17 million years ago, roamed the solar system and finally landed on the international continent of Antarctica 13,000 years ago. After first encounter with humans in 1984, Allen was carefully studied by scientists, leading to the announcement that he contained evidence of life on Mars.
Today, Rock 84001 speaks to us across all those billions of years and millions of miles. It speaks of the possibility of life. We will continue to listen closely to what it has to say.
It was later decided that it was unclear what Allen was saying about life. When considering human settlement on Mars, the planet is often seen as an empty place, a blank canvas, void of life, and therefore empty of agency and inherent value. Mars is the ultimate desert, our new terra nullius, where humankind can once again carelessly manipulate the world to our liking. Mars is the dream world where the narrative of human domination is running wild and free. Planetary personhood supports the positive aspects of space exploration, such as curiosity, humbleness, and reverence for mystery, while it prevents our boldness from sliding into recklessness. Cherishing Martian geodiversity and employing a strategic anthropomorphism could lead us to a new relationship with the land, and while this practice doesn't provide immediate answers, it frames a certain Martian mindset. What forms of presences and absences are supported and constructed by particular activities? Who is allowed to maintain their current form? Can respecting Martian ways of being move us to reconcile with Earthlings?
Currently, there is a renewed effort of going into space by NASA, SpaceX, Blue Origin, and other companies, and it's entitled or called the New Space Age. For us, what we're interested in doing this project, was that space travel is one of the grand narratives of how we see ourselves as a human species and our role in the universe. and how we see ourselves in relation to other species, to the land and to a planet. And the narrative of going to Mars is kind of that it's a blank canvas, a no man's land where nothing is really happening, a desert that we can extract from, terraform, and dominate. And this kind of approach or attitude towards Mars is very much reflecting or is a continuation of the same values and ideas that have been and are driving colonialism here on Earth. So to protect Mars in a way, we wrote a Universal Declaration of Martian Rights.
Yeah, it consists of 8 paragraphs. And like the whole project maybe asks, can we be kind to a planet even without life? Or can we create an ethics that is not centered around life?
Mm-hmm. And the idea of giving personhood rights to a planet comes from the Rights of Nature movement, which, for example, in New Zealand, there have been numerous natural entities, such as a volcano, a river, or a national park, that have been given personhood rights. Basically, the ownership status has been moved from the government to the land itself. So any decisions that have to be that are concerning these entities need to be taken with the agreement or with the acceptance of these places.
So you need to ask the mountain, for example, what it wants.
Yeah. And so we would like to also have practically how this works, because it's not so easy to ask a river what it wants or to have a mountain represent itself in court. In New Zealand, they have a council of guardians and custodians, which is composed of different people that have a direct relation to the land, for example, indigenous people, or also legal experts and scientists that have a close relationship to these places. And it's hard to think of indigenous peoples or indigenous humans that could, or to Mars, that could represent itself. So we're looking for guardians for Mars, and if you feel like you would like to support Martian rights, or if you feel like you might be a fitting guardian, apply.
Yeah, so this group would think deeply what's best for Mars then. Yeah, and something in the beginning of this project, we had the idea that Mars is just a place where nothing is going on and it's still. And yeah, on Earth we talk a lot about biodiversity, and then we someone showed us this map of Martian geodiversity, and we found this really inspiring, that it's a lot of things going on there, and also there's Mars quakes and winds, and yeah, the stones are moving around doing things.
And so one of the declaration points is a call to end biocentrism and to honor non-life. And biocentrism can be seen as this kind of ethical worldview that divides matter into living beings and non-living beings. And this kind of, on Earth, biocentrism has quite a positive ecological impact, you could say, because we value all kinds of life, not only human life. So therefore, it might result in activism and in movements to protect life that is threatened. But on Mars, biocentrism, it's revealed that biocentrism still reveals a relationship to inanimate matter as a mere resource that we can just exploit and do whatever we want about it.
Yeah, this is a quote that we find inspiring. Ethics is not a concern we add to the question of matter, but rather is the very nature of what it means to matter, by Karin Barad.
And so enabling respect and empathy to these other ways of being, to stones that live on Mars. We try to use strategic anthropomorphism, which is called by
Jane
Bennett, contemporary philosopher. And anthropomorphism is this a tendency to attribute human traits to non-human things and emotions and intentions. Also, for example, putting faces on things or seeing faces in things that don't really have one. And we try to use strategic anthropomorphism as a way to open.
Yeah, create
open
some
up.
kind of curiosity and
Empathy.
relationship and empathy. But also for us doing this, it also creates, of course, the question: do we have to treat Martians as humans in order to respect them, or can they also exist in their own rights? It gets clear if you try to push non-humans into the systems of or human systems that it's nonsensical also.
Yeah, and the project exists as a website and a movie, but also in exhibition settings where there's usually different props such as a large talking Mars or protest signs, videos, a flag,
Alan's passport,
flying, levitating, and a little translation video where there's our friend Diane translating what a meteorite is saying. Another project that we want to talk about where we use anthropomorphism is Tale of a Tree Human, which is a public sculpture in Sweden together that we built together with in collaboration with a biosphere area, and a mythological story about a human turning to a tree to talk to the forest.
Yeah, and we also have a here is Vide, who and the forest is trying to talk to them, but Vide won't listen, and then Vide meets a bison who gives them a seed, and then the forest starts to grow inside of Vide, who's turning into a tree slowly and start to hear the wants of the trees, and they're saying, "Help, don't cut me down." And then Vide try to help their friends by sending help through the roots and also talking through the roots, like with the mycelium's help. And then in the end, it's created this portal where you can talk to the forest through the roots. Yeah.
Yeah. So so they turned themselves in the end into kind of a forest human mediator, opening a portal across species boundaries. And so while writing this myth, we also saw that there were trees being cut down by the municipality, and because apparently they grew too old and too dangerous to the people around because branches could fall down.
There's a lot of kids in this area.
Yeah, and their plan was to take them out completely, but we asked if they could at least leave the stumps, and which became the basis for the sculpture. And it consists of 7 trees, one which has eyes and skin patches, and 6 stumps that have carved footprints, which invite the people to take off their shoes and to connect with the stump and try to imagine what it's like to be a tree, and perhaps carefully listen and try to understand what the forest is saying.
And all these footsteps, they come from people who live in the area, mostly the kids and also some grown-ups. And yeah, they can also read the story next to it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a circular mythological story which goes through seasons, and the beginning is also the end, and we printed them out in little books.
Yeah, and during the time we were there, there was a lot of kids also helping us out. And this is one of our friends who's pretending to be a tree.
Her name is Sibal. And the most recent project that we've been working on is called Mud and Flood, The Return of Linnea. And it's a project that started by collaborating with a scientist from the Netherlands Institute for Sea Research. And Marte was telling us about mudflats and salt marshes, which are coastal ecosystems between land and the sea, which used to be covering most of the coastlines in the Netherlands. But as you might know, they have these delta works, which is a very complex system of seawalls and sluices and seawalls that can be opened and closed for coastal protection from floodings and storms. And therefore, these places have disappeared mostly because there's now just a sharp boundary between the sea and the land. And but there's a kind of a paradigm shift happening in science and coastal protection, where we're realizing that these transitionary zones, which are very muddy places with grasses that grow and are flooded twice a day because of the high and the low tides, are very important also for coastal protection in the long term. And they are also very biodiverse places. In Netherlands, one of the most biodiverse places with a lot of benthic animals that live in the mud, and sea creatures and birds coming to rest, and
grasses, yeah.
And grasses. So there's a realization that that some of these seawalls might not hold much longer, and that we need to find other ways to not work against nature, but work with her. And therefore, there's Marte saying that we might need to remove some seawalls or move them and allow the sea to take land that we have been taking from her.
So we need to sacrifice some land.
Yes, which is oftentimes farmland. And this is a very controversial realization, because most people wouldn't want to give back the land that they have been living on or working on. And and we wanted to create an installation that is informing the visitors about the role of these coastal ecosystems, but also one that tries to invite to think beyond borders, such as the sea and the land, the human and the non-human, science and mythology as well. And we realized, or we discovered, that there are a lot of end-of-the-world mythologies of a great flood that is going over Earth and destroying civilizations. Likewise, there's also stories about, creation stories about humanity or life on Earth being created out of clay or mud. And we wanted to compare those also to the stories or the scientific predictions of rising sea levels and increased floods, and also the stories about the mud floods. And then we discovered Linnea, who is a forgotten goddess from Zeeland.
Yeah, this is sounds from the installation. So we created it together with the sound artist, and it's water that touching land in different ways. Yeah.
And we created an installation where you can meet Linnea and become her, and try to identify also being a mud flood. And a little bit about Linnea. This is an altar piece that we borrowed from a museum where she is carved into. And she was worshipped in Zeeland, which is a part in the Netherlands that has been also heavily impacted by a huge flood in the 50s. And she was worshipped in this area more than 2,000 years ago, which is mostly forgotten. And only around in the 17th century, a large storm uncovered some of her altar pieces by flushing off a dune, a sand dune. And nobody really knew about her at that time.
And they also found
anymore.
a temple.
Yes.
Submerged temple there.
Yeah, in the 70s, there was a fisherman who was just taking out his nets of fishes, and he found this piece of a stone with inscriptions, which led to the discovery of a submerged temple, or the remains of one. And while not much is known about her, and no stories are actually known, the only thing that we have is these altar pieces and the symbols that they contain. And her name might have meant she who is at the sea, and she's oftentimes displayed with a boat that she has one leg inside of, and a basket of apples, and a dog next to her, and a seashell above her. And the people researching her think that she might have been a deity of life and death, but also maybe a protector of people who went into the North Sea, to cross the North Sea. And we try to reimagine her as a hydro-feminist, or rather a mud-feminist deity that lives between the land and the sea, shaking boundaries between science, mythology, life, non-life, human, non-human, destruction and creation. And
yeah, so in the room there's this soundscape. So we created a kind of a temple for her, and there is this altar who celebrates mud, which is bubbling, and there's also these salt blocks, so which there are shells on top of, and yeah, we got to know that the ratio of salt that you have in your body and in the ocean is very similar. And we found this really nice, that our bodies are so connected to the ocean.
And the salt lick blocks, they're kind of, I don't know if you know them, but oftentimes they're given to cows or horses as a way to get the needed minerals. And these ones, there's some of them were licked by horses.
Yeah, this one.
There is one.
For 2 years, one of them were licked.
Yeah. and
some of them were licked by water in different ways. And in these shells, you can listen to the shells, and then you hear the voice of the goddess.
The space between ourselves and our others is at once as distant as the sea, yet also closer than our own skin, still cycling through us, pausing as this bodily thing. In the murky wetlands, I live as multiple in-between soggy soaked solution, hairy with tendons of grass that keep me together tightly. I am waiting and waiting for earth eating, ebbing, fluvial, dripping, coursing, pooling, folded, a water habitat. Technological, meteorological and geophysical trickles and floods. They call me tidal. I trickle impermeable scales, but I'm hairy with tendons of grass that keep me together tightly. They open the habitat for others to nest as they colonize this barren environment, this disrupted biodiverse steady-state ecosystem. Table salt. Some people, children mostly, have been known to eat mud pies, and animals with big tongues lick columns of salt blocks.
Okay, it's longer, but it's enough.
Yeah.
So the installation is interactive also, so we've been inspired by rites of passage or rituals of transformation, wherein the first thing you can do is to sacrifice your hair. So you sacrifice your hair to dancing seaweed. So the seaweed is dancing for you, and then you give it hair to dance with it and also to feed it. And the next step that you can do is the transformation part, and then you are becoming the mud flats by drinking mud. And it's still similar as the stones that you ate, but in water.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the integration part, you can choose an apple with a message that is speaking to you. You can eat it or give it to someone.
And we made also a triptych painting where there's Linnea shown in 3 different environments: in the sea, in the mud, that is the transitionary zone, and the land. And we made it together with an image generating AI, the DALI, and we mixed her symbolism, the apples, the dogs, the seashells, together with attributes from science and the stories of Marte, such as the mud flats and test tubes, and there's also pictures from Netherlands with a seawall and windmills and different elements. And some things,
cutting of hair, yeah.
the cutting of hair, and some elements the AI came up with itself, and such as eggs. I don't know why, but
yeah, we said it was a goddess of rebirth, so probably that's why.
Yeah, it could be that's why, and so we just embraced it and went with it.
Okay, now to another project with another tone, which is called the Pink Chicken Project. And yeah, maybe we can just start with the film. Yeah.
Pink Chicken Project suggests changing the colour of the entire species, Gallus domesticus, to pink. Why? Human actions have altered the Earth so profoundly that we have entered a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. The stability of the biosphere is threatened, with an uncomfortably high probability of an uninhabitable planet within the next century. This devastation will leave traces in the strata for geologists of the future, such as plastic pollution, soot from power stations, nuclear fallout, and surprisingly, the fossilized bones of the global proliferation of the domestic chicken. The bones of the 60 billion chickens that we kill every year leave a geographically widespread, stratigraphically restricted, and morphologically distinct trace in the strata. To reoccupy this identifier of our age, we will genetically modify a chicken with pink bones and feathers, using a gene from the insect cochineal to produce a pigment that will be fossilized when combined with the calcium of the bone. And with the recently invented CRISPR gene drive technique, 100% of the offspring of our genetically modified pink chicken will inherit our modifications. Planting eggs at chicken farms around the world, the pink gene is estimated to reach all chicken in just 12 to 19 generations, thus permanently altering the entire species, Gallus domesticus, and colouring the stratum of the Anthropocene pink. The chicken also carries a message in its DNA, encoded into A's, T's, G's, and C's, a time capsule readable for thousands of years. We, the humans of planet Earth, write this message at the beginning of the Anthropocene. The current devastation of the planet is not the result of activities undertaken by the whole species Homo sapiens. Instead, it derives from a small group of humans in power. We urge you to fight this oppression, for it enables and aggravates the anthropocentric violence forced upon the non-human world. Sent in hope that you have reimagined us as a biological organism. Help us accelerate this effort by ordering your own pink egg. The traces of humanity is no longer in the hands of Monsanto and DuPont, the radiation of nuclear bombs or the oil spills of ExxonMobil, but also in yours.
Yeah, so this project is framed as an activist campaign, and it's maybe a suggestion that lays somewhere in between utopia and dystopia. And yeah, it's a story that is intended to create a discourse on gene drives and other technologies. And it has different layers, but we try to like access the underlying ethical and political issues and ask questions such as, what relationship do we want to have to other species? And we use this technology called gene drives, which is a way of genetically modify just not a single individual, but an entire species. Or rather, it's a way to greatly accelerate the spread of a genetic modification through an entire population. So without the gene drive, if you make a pink chicken, 50% of the offspring of your modified organism would carry the genetic trait. So over generations, your modification would quickly disappear. But with the gene drive, 100% would carry the modification. So it means that you're forcing a specific genetic trait to spread to entire populations over theoretically just 12 to 19 generations. So theoretically, to color all chickens pink, now you would only need one single modified pink chicken, which is equipped with a gene drive. So yeah, you could modify the entire species on a global scale very quickly. So needless to say, this is a very powerful technology, and the activists that are discouraging its use has been calling it biology's nuclear weapon. But contrary to nuclear weapon, it's because it's based on CRISPR, it's very easy to use or to make. And another question we like to ask with the project is, how does the violence of gene drives compare to the ongoing violence of factory farming? So here you can see an ancient red jungle fowl to the left, which is an ancient chicken, and the selectively bred modern broiler to the right. So you can see that it grows very quick, and this is why it's such a good geological identifier of our time, because it grows so quickly so that the joints and the bones, they twist and they break, so you can see the difference in the mountain. And also the broiler chickens, they live completely sealed off and in climate-controlled houses, so they wouldn't survive without us humans. So if the human die out, also the chicken would die out. So yeah, the broiler chickens are completely dependent on modern technology, and you could say that the bones are technologically made objects. And yeah, they also suffer a lot, of course. If they would live beyond the 6 weeks when they're killed, the mortality rate increases by 50% because they get heart attacks and the body collapses under their own weight. Yeah, and this project is also on exhibitions. So we created different objects and sculptures. And yeah, as I said, it's framed as an activist campaign, so you can find it online. And there you can choose to order or not order an egg. So, which means that we have got a lot of message from people all over the world. And the project, we also took the project to the United Nations, where they have, under the Convention of Biological Diversity, they are trying to agree on international regulations on if gene drives should be legal, and if so, how. Yeah, being there was very interesting experience for us. It's a very polarized forum, and it's hard to have, it's hard for people to have discussions when they have opposing views. But to our surprise, everyone wanted to talk to us because we have the pink gene drive chicken. So we had a lot of discussions about, both what gene drive is and what it means, and yeah, it was a chance to discuss things under a little bit more humorous feeling, I guess. And it also consists. We also made a book where we what do you say, like collected the discussions we had, and also invited people to write from different perspectives. We need a publisher, so if someone knows a publisher. But what we try to do with this project is to we try to zoom out on out to geological timescales and ask, like, what do we want to leave behind in the stones? Is it pink bones, and how can we be good ancestors?
And the last project
I think
that we'll
so.
talk about is microbial rune stones. And so traditionally in the Nordic countries, rune stones were raised in honor of people that the builders wanted to have remembered for generations to come. And we decided to also raise rune stones for our ancestors, the ones that surround us are inside of us, and lay the foundation for life as we know it, and continue to maintain balance on planet Earth. Microorganisms. So we made 5 rune stones for 5 different microorganisms living in a national park in Latvia, and they were chosen together with scientists, microbiologists from the Latvian University, and an ecologist that works at this national park. So this one is a runestone raised in honor for cyanobacteria, which are the ancestors of all plant life and also creators of oxygen. And so how the runestones are made, this is a picture of one kind of cyanobacteria, and in the stone we would carve kind of representations of this microorganism together with short sentences that we wrote together with the scientists that invite you to somehow remember the microorganism. And next to them there's also little plates that have a little bit more information accessible about the ecological role of these microorganisms. And this was also done in times of COVID, where viruses especially were quite demonized. And these descriptions, if you scan, you can read more about it. they show the microorganism from different points of view, and none of them are good and none of them are bad, but they all have their different effects on other organisms around. And cyanobacteria, while it has really changed life on Earth, and it has led to the big oxygenation event that was a mass extinction actually at that time, but it led also to the kind of life that surrounds us nowadays. But on the other hand also, for example, we see blooming of cyanobacteria in the sea, which is killing a lot of aquatic life. And so in that regard, for example, it can be seen as quite a dangerous microorganism. Yet, for example, the blooming is an effect of farming activities and the not pesticides, but the minerals that are being the fertilizers going into waterways. And each microorganism has their own little stories. And this is Streptomyces, which is another bacteria that lives in soil. And when you smell soil, you know there's this characteristic kind of a little bit acidy kind of aroma. And what you're smelling is actually a molecule that is produced by Streptomyces. And they are also very important decomposers. And then there's also a stone for a virus, for bacteriophages, which is the being that the most numerous being on planet Earth, actually. They are completely everywhere, inside of you, on this table, in the air. They're even on the space station. They're completely everywhere where life is on Earth. And while these viruses are really dangerous for bacteria, they are also part of our immune system, and they protect us from unwelcomed guests. And then there's a stone for Trichoderma, which is a fungi that lives with trees, at tree roots, and also helps with nutrition and protecting the tree from other microorganisms. And the last stone was raised in honor for Bifidobacteria, which you might know. It lives in your stomach and your gut. And this one you can't meet that often in the national park unless you meet another creature a little bit similar to you. And yeah, they have been with us for thousands of years, or maybe millions, I don't really know. They have been with us for for a very long time, and we depend on them as much as they depend on us. And yeah, and we want to say thank you, and also thank you for being such a good host for us and for the Bifidobacteria.
Thank you.
I thank you in return. It was a fantastic presentation, and it was great to go deeper in some of the projects you already mentioned. No? But now it's time for questions. If anybody has I think that it's a good opportunity to continue a bit the dialogue we've been having.
I'm so cold. I'm just gonna...
Hello again.
Hey.
I was also researching you before you came here, especially about the pink chicken project, and I also saw on YouTube that some like people are commenting underneath the video, saying bad and good things about it, and I myself wasn't even sure if it's because this gene drive technology it will be discussed, or it's been discussed at the moment if you should use it, but at first I wasn't sure if you would actually do it, and then I think I went through the website and saw, or for an interview, and saw that if you would be allowed to do it, that you wouldn't do it. It's more about giving this thought that we could do it and the impact of it. But is this still your current opinion about this project, if you would actually do it, if it's possible for you?
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to have, like, it's a good tool for discussion, but I think it's, yeah, for me, I would feel bad if we did this. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like an experiment on a level that, yeah, we couldn't. It wouldn't be so ethical, I think, to let out the pink chicken in the wild.
Yeah, also because with CRISPR, even though you can kind of aim towards specific parts of the genome, of the DNA, to edit, and you might be able to find these genes are responsible for the color of the feathers or the bones, and if you're able to kind of put in a piece of code that would produce a pigment somehow, it doesn't exclude the possibility that this same gene strand would also create some other effects in the chicken. So even if you would just want to change the color, it might also have some other effect somehow, somewhere elsewhere in the chicken. Yeah, it's I think quite complicated to actually aim just for one single small modification.
No, that's not what they said in the biolab.
That's what we learned in our CRISPR workshop.
Okay. Yeah, I also think that factory farming is, it's not so easy to know what's worse. It's also not so good idea, maybe, in the way it is now, I think. Yeah. But I think this balance between fiction and, yeah, it's a hard thing to balance when doing projects like this. Like in the beginning, we were much more, even more like tricking in the tone that we actually are doing it. And then people got very upset, understandably. And now it's more balanced, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But we still get a lot of messages actually from people who want to order the egg and have a pink chicken running in their flock.
Yeah.
Even today, I think there was an email.
Yeah.
And what are you usually answering to them?
Nothing. We've been answering, or we had like we answered everyone. Now we answer everyone now and then we wrote about. Yeah, I think we like explained a little bit and about what we want to discuss, and we also asked them. Oh yeah, it was when we started with the book. Then we invited some of them to talk to us, and we had, yeah, that's what we did.
I guess I'm gonna ask a question. I think that all of us are interested always to understand when a project starts. No? We had that conversation yesterday. Maybe it's interesting to also share, no, with the team how your ideas come and where the ideas are sort of developed and how do you start a project. No? Because I see that in some questions there are a lot of collaborations, and in a lot of cases there are also issues connected to working with scientists and non-scientists, and also how that affects the project itself. No, this idea of, as you were mentioning, an attitude that can be also sarcasm against certain of the developments of science, and how can these type of collaborations understand this new attitude between the reality of fiction, that I think that it's very important on the public sphere, especially for this type of subjects. No?
Yeah, and when it was the pink chicken, me and Leo did it during our masters, and then we worked together with Imperial College. There's in Biolab, And it was really funny when we had the idea, because we had different ideas, and we came to them and then we said like, yeah, we have this really stupid idea that we want to color all chickens pink, but it's not possible. And then the scientists were like, it is actually possible with gene drive. And then he was like, he was run away, and then he was like, they want to make a pink gene drive chicken. And then everyone was like, whoa. And then he thought it was really funny, but he was also like, don't spread my name. He was like, yeah, it's really good, but I can't stand behind this because he had some other troubles with it before. Yeah, but now he's more fine with it actually. But yeah, but I think how our project starts, they start a bit different. I think different projects. So but we often use open calls, either that someone is contacting us or that we find an open call that we find inspiring, and maybe that for example, when we did the Mars project, we had already done research and the projects about stones for a while, and then we found this open call and we wanted to give passport to stones because we thought it was funny, and then we were like, but it doesn't really make sense, and then we found this open call about Mars, and then we were like, wait a minute, that's where all the stones live, and then we we applied to that one, and then yeah, but it's a bit different, I think. Sometimes it starts from other places also.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the goddess one, then we had no idea what we were doing. We just knew that we wanted to apply, or I knew I wanted to work with water for a while because we haven't done that, and I love water. And then it was this open call for BAD Awards, which is where it's exhibited now in Eindhoven. It's for an award where you get funding to do a project, and we knew we wanted to apply. And then we just looked through who's the scientists, and then we reached out to some of them, and then Marte was really nice. So then we were like, we want to do something about water. And then, yeah, we started it.
Yeah, and it's also quite fun and interesting to work with scientists. And for example, with Mud and Flood, this was the case that we didn't know what we will do, but just by having a conversation and exchanging
Oh yeah, you
ideas.
liked hydrofeminism.
Yeah, like the kind of, I was also for another project that I was doing before, I got to know this philosopher Astrid Neymanis, who talks about hydrofeminism, which is kind of a recognition that we are bodies of water, and by thinking through yourself as a body of water, how do we relate to other bodies like that? For example, other beings that also consist of water, or rivers, or lakes, or the sea, or the clouds, and we like also this kind of approach of teasing a little bit these boundaries between species and other bodies, and somehow it organically also developed into what it is. And with this project, for example, it started also with an open call for environmental art and land art, and I knew that I would like to do something about microorganisms because I was just reading a book about different bacteria and fungi and viruses, and it was also kind of in the call they said that they would like to put more attention on the bees and the animals that are threatened in the national park, and nothing was mentioned about microorganisms, and just felt like they are a little bit unseen and invisible, so why not bring them a little bit more to the forefront, because this whole park is just full of them. And then it's just a matter of reaching out to scientists and sending emails until you find somebody that wants to have a conversation, and then work further with it, and then the idea also develops.
Yeah, I think I'm surprised, or now I'm not surprised anymore, that when that everyone always wants to collaborate. I think like yeah, even when I was on a BA, I started to be like, oh, this person is really like the best scientist in this area. If I send an email and ask if they want to talk to me, they will probably not answer, and then they answer, and then you do a project, and they're very thankful. We're like, oh, interesting. They're like, we really need stories. We really need graspable things. Like scientists often say also like, for me, I have a technology, but it's always too early or too late to discuss it, because it's too early because we have no examples, or it's too late because it's already implemented. So we can't really have like informed discussions about things. So I think also, scientists are very happy just to have stories and also images and things like that, I think,
Yeah, thank you for the lecture. It was also very refreshing to see all the projects another time. I have a question about the first project that you presented, the one about Mars and transforming Mars into a legal entity, so to say, in order to respect it. And like we had another talk with Filipa Ramos as well, where it was about pretty much like transforming non-human entities into legal entities in order to respect them. And I was wondering, like, do we need this step in order to make people think about the way we relate to non-human entities in a way? Why do we need to recognize non-human objects as legal entities, as, for example, also big corporations today are also legal entities? And it's an approach that is very much rooted in our Western secular Christian thinking, where the man is above the earth, like with the Dominion Terra and everything. So if you think that there are other ways to respect non-human entities without turning them into legal entities, so to bring them to our system of values, so to say, or recognition or acknowledgement.
Yeah, I agree. I think okay, I'm thinking about multiple things, but maybe one thing that I feel like we have a way of seeing reality in our part of the world, which is very, it's all these systems and all these legal frameworks, and maybe it's needed to go that way, to go into another way of viewing non-humans, maybe. But also, this is something that we are trying to play with also in the narrative. We've been trying to do this arch from where it starts, very like, that it makes sense, you know? You're like, oh, yeah, we can give personhood for the planet Mars, and then we go further and further, and then you end up with like giving passport to stones, and then you're like, But it's still very much, the tone is still like, we think, it's gonna happen, but then, it's nonsensical in a way, and I feel like it's very double. It's like, I feel like the Rights for Nature movement is great, and but it's also problematic, I think. That's what I think.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said, it goes quickly into absurdity when you kind of start to really think about, okay, how do we give personhood rights to Mars, and Mars is little stones and these stones, and okay, and what do we do with, what does a stone even do with a passport in the end? And it's also a little bit kind of...
It's a trap,
and also it's perhaps a little bit of a critique on these kind of legal systems as such. And well, if we can dream, then ideally we don't need also these kind of personhood rights for anybody, but we would just respect each other and not try to create rules about who can and who cannot be considered a person, and who can and cannot have rights.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm curious how you came together as a studio and what your process is working together.
So the third person who's not here, we knew each other for a very long time, and then he started to help me out during my BA when I was very stressed during my bachelor project, and he comes from a science background, and then I was very tired of industrial design, And then we're like, maybe we can work together. And then we started to work together. And we applied to a master's together. And then we were like, how do you start a collective or a studio? We were like, oh, you need a name maybe. And then we were like, Nonhuman Nonsense just came suddenly when we just did the pink chicken. And then we created the website and blah, blah, blah. And then you came to us
3 years ago as an intern. So I was also doing my BA, and we have this compulsory internship, and I was sending letters to different people. I think I sent letters to 20 different studios or artists.
Very good letter. Wow.
And then, yeah, they liked the letter, and we had a video call, and a week later I came to Berlin, and we were working together and became really good friends also. And later on, a year ago, I returned, and since then we're working. And the process, Leo, for example, he's very analytical, and he has this science background, and he was also, for some time, really into like journalism, right? And he's super good at writing and formulating things.
And talking to scientists.
Talking to scientists, talking in general, super good. And but for example, if he has a blank page, then it's a little bit of a struggle how to start. And for me, and Linnea especially, it's easy to just throw out ideas and to play with them. And I come also from more of a making background, so sculpture and product design, and thinking through also this dimension. And you also come actually kind of from that world more. And yeah, and I don't know, we always work together from 10 to 5 usually, every day.
No, not every day.
Every 2 days, then 1 free day, then 2 days, and then 2 free days.
4 days a week, yeah. That's what it says. But often more also. But yeah, and I think we follow very like classic design process actually, because my industrial design education was very good with teaching us how to do a project from beginning to end, and then we did it over and over and over again, and then
so we iterate a lot, and we might have some spontaneous ideas that we don't also completely understand fully why we want to do things, and then we might analyze them, or we might think around them, or make them, and it's an iterative process. You make something, you discover something, you change something, it doesn't work, you go back, and it's a lot of it's similar to making or working in like product design almost. The difference is that we're not trying to solve a problem, but rather to find a way to talk about an issue that is too big to solve.
Well, before closing, I think, because we are already in the right time, I wanted to ask you, because I think that it's also a question that it comes quite a lot between the artists in residence here, and I think that your studio represents also a group of new studios that are really pushing the limits between the practice of design and the arts. And I think that it's quite important also in terms of subject matter. But my question also is related to what's your position, no? on this bridge in between design and art. When do you feel that you are pushing from one side or the other, and how is this your relation to each of these fields? No?
Feels like you have something.
I don't know. They don't feel so different, really, and they're very much part of a similar way of thinking. And well, I don't know. I feel like maybe the boundary has always been a little bit artificial, or it's just sometimes maybe it's nice to call yourself a designer or an artist, depending who you talk to, or it might kind of, they work a little bit like bubbles that are, maybe the design world is more like these kind of applied artistic practice, which is to do with problem solving and somehow with more utilitarian things and more maybe systematic thinking, while the arts might seem a bit more emotional, but really feels like they're a little bit of like different sides of the same coin. And yeah, I don't know, I guess sometimes also, depending who you're talking to, you might call yourself an artist or a designer. If I'm, for example, talking to my friends in Latvia, then I will tell that, oh, I'm doing art. Because if I say that I'm a designer, then they will ask, oh, are you doing fashion or graphic design? And then I try to explain my projects, and they get very confused. Well, if I start with saying I'm an artist, and then I explain them, it's much more easier to understand, because the assumption of what is a designer or what is an artist is quite set in the mind of my friends in Latvia, for example. But if I'm in Netherlands, then I sometimes call myself a designer, and it's fine. So I don't really know. It's really blurry and foggy in my mind.
Yeah, we never talk about it. Or sometimes when we write biography, it's like, is it best if we're a designer or an artist here? Or both. Art and design studio, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.